following video is a hand history review I did live on stream with special guest Aaron Barone. In this video, we go over a bunch of hands I played in the tournament, and he comes up with some great analysis. He knows what he's talking about. He plays much higher stakes than I do and has a great stream, twitch.tv/abarone68. I strongly recommend you guys go check him out. Without further ado, though, let's get into the video and see what Aaron has to say about my tournament play. So let's go. Okay. So I raised off 22 in the hijack. I don't remember this hand at all, actually. So I'm going to bet a third. That's what I do. Fair calls. He leads. Okay. I'm glad I didn't see myself fold. And then I'm assuming they don't jam. Okay. And I'm assuming I fold here. Yeah. Okay.
So I think the flop is pretty normal. I don't think we have to discuss that part. So what are your thoughts on do you have any reads on this player to start the hand that you remember?
No. I mean, if I'm making folds like that on the river, there's certainly a player who's not showing themselves to be too wacky. If you know what I mean, like their VPIP won't be crazy, the PF, all that won't be too crazy, and I would look at them and I'd be like, right, well, I'm going to put this more in the value category when they start to lead on boards which aren't exactly leadable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, leading has become a more common thing from the out of position player in the last year or two. And usually it's done on turns where it improves. Normally it's done when a scary card hits, is the most easy way to say it. When a card improves the villain's range over your range. So if he's in the big blind here and this card is the 5 of hearts, it's like, well, he has deuce 3 and I don't. He has more flushes than me, I guess. Like things like that that's when the card, or a 4, where the big blind has more 4s than you, the card that makes it the board better for them. This card doesn't do that. It doesn't do it at all. You have still just as many, if not more, set combinations. He doesn't have ace queen ever. You do. So it doesn't really make sense for him to bet this turn. So I like your decision to call. And then on the river, I was wondering what sort of hands you do call with and why you folded this one.
Okay. It's purely a bluff catcher, right? At this point, they're not ever betting for value here. It doesn't scream "I'm a bluff" at me. That'd be my thought process, I think, and I'd be a very tight fold. I appreciate that. But yeah, you're gonna tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, it is. I mean, it is a bluff catcher, but I think my opponent, I would categorize him either or her either as, if they're good, I think they're going to have bluffs. Like a good player is not going to, only have value. They're going to be more balanced in how they play, hopefully all spots. And if it's a good player, it's a really weird turn lead. If it's a good player, I'm thinking, I just don't see this often. If it's a bad player, they might not bluff as much. Some bad players bluff more than good players do, right? They just bluff too much. But even if I thought he never has a bluff, there are times I beat hands like ace 5. There are times he decided to bet king queen or queen jack, or even something weird like jack 9 of hearts, where he's improved to, all those hands have either, middle pair, third pair, weaker top pair. And so I beat all of those. Mm-hmm. So I think if you're deciding to call here with, maybe we'll call it queen jack of spades, like that would be more of a pure bluff catcher. Like that hand beats fewer hands he could bet for value. So I think the ace 10's a little, like I'd rather have ace 10 here in your spot than ace king.
Yeah, okay, I see that.
because ace 10 is going to block jack 10. And I don't really expect him to ever have ace jack. Like, that's a really weird way to play ace jack. He doesn't jam pre-flop. He leads the turn. It's just not something I expect. And when I say that, it doesn't mean it's not ever going to happen. It's just I'm looking at the likelihood of all the options. And if I have to pick one hand that he has, ace jack seems like one of the least likely choices. So I would look at this hand and I would say, all right, well, what do I want him to have? Well, I want him to have hearts because I beat those, right? I want him to have a bricked straight draw on the flop, which would be 6-7, 5-6, 7-5, 3 deuce, well, 5-3, 5 deuce. Well, I beat all of those, and I don't have any of those cards in my hand. I also don't have a heart in my hand. What do I not want him to have? 2 pair with an ace, right? Ace 8, ace 4, ace queen. Ace queen's not likely, given pre-flop action. Ace 8, ace 4, I block those with the ace. I also lose to jack 10, which is really weird, but possible. But guess what? I have a 10 that blocks jack 10. So you're also getting a good price. If he shoved, the range that you should call with is actually tighter because the odds you're getting. But now you're getting 3-1, right? You're putting in 9 to win 28, basically. So
Yeah.
27. So for all those reasons, like the odds are really, really good. You just need to be right here 1 out of 4 times, basically, to break even. Whatever it is, 1 out of 3 times. And you unblock all the bluff hands he could have, but you block the nuts. So I would never fold this river, even versus a nitty player, unless I had thousands of hands. But if you have 100 hands on a player and they've been nitty, it could just be a weird sample where they, didn't have any decent hands, or they, for whatever reason, were playing scared. Like if you played a player who plays a $5 average buy-in in $1,000 game, I bet they're going to play really tight. But if you played a $1,000 average buy-in player in a $5 buy-in game, I bet they're going to play really loose. And I don't know again who this guy is or what he plays, but it's just something to think to keep in mind.
Okay, yeah, I feel bad for folding it now, given your explanation, and looking at it, it just looks like the perfect, perfect hand to be calling here with. I don't know. We sometimes have these moments in game, but I think I have them multiple times per tournament, so I need to just think a bit better, a bit more on it. I think when it comes around, when these situations occur. So a good hand, good spot, I think.
Yeah, so I just think when you look at these spots and you're deciding whether to call fold on the river, you just sometimes, I mean, a lot of times the decisions are really close between the two options. Like if you had, I'm trying to think of what hand you could have here that I'd be closer. Like if you had ace king with ace king of clubs, right? Or maybe ace king with the king of hearts and the ace of clubs. You're like, well, I blocked these flush draws now. I don't block the jack 10. Well, I mean, it gets a little bit worse. But ultimately, if you want to have reads on players, and it's not always possible, but usually after 50 hands with somebody, you can see something that tells you, oh, I think this guy might not know what he's doing. He might be overly aggressive. He might be too tight. He might have just lost a pot and go a little bit bananas about trying to win more chips back. You're just looking for extra information to help you make a decision.
Yeah.
And so the next hand I have is 172.
Is it pocket sevens?
Which is 6-7. It's 6-7 suited.
All right, yeah. So we're just like a few hands behind. It's like 5 hands difference or something. It's so weird, isn't it? All right.
It is. We're losing more hands in the file somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll find it in the general area. But we got the hand here.
Also, hello, Borbag.
Hey, Ballbag, how you doing, buddy? and we've got loads of legends in the house. Actually, we've got Ian Simpson Poker,
Mhm.
of course, Fuzzy Ferret. We've got Mikey, Teeple. Hello, everybody. And then we got who was in before? Spaceman Spliff. How you doing? They came and followed me the other day and said looking forward to the hand history review. So here we go.
Yeah, he's one of the best moderators of my channel. Definitely top 5.
Can't beat a good moderator. Shamefully, I don't have any.
You don't have any moderators or
Any
any
good
good ones?
ones? Any good ones?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's
So
see.
okay. So we've got 16 big blinds, 6.5 big blinds in the big blinds. Button limps. We have 6-7. We check it back. Just check. I think I know what you're going to say about this hand. I bluff river. They fold. Okay. Okay. So, we won the hand. Surely you don't have to talk about this. Surely there's nothing bad about it.
I mean, you did win, which is good. So talk to me about turn and river.
Okay. So,
Because flop, I mean, everybody ends up, I think, checking the big blind, out of position 100% of the time there is going to be probably fine. But you bet turn, you bet river.
yes. I don't. Okay, I know I don't have a very good hand for this. But I somehow set some opportunity here. Looking at this now, I'm like, this is a bit of a punt. Like this here is, and now if I'm gonna bluff the river, I don't think it needs to be pot for one thing. Because all I'm really trying to get them to fold, I'm not trying to get them to fold a queen or a 10. I'm just trying to get them to fold like, I don't know, King Jack with the King of Diamonds or something. If I'm trying to get them to fold at all, or like anything with diamond draw they've called turn with. So I don't need to bet this big if I'm going to bet at all, which probably should be never. What are your thoughts?
So why do you think it's a punt?
I don't think my hand is. I don't know. I don't think my hand is. Is it worth it? Basically, I'm in the big blinds. And now, for the sake of my big blinds, I'm now laying an additional 6.2 big blinds overall, 6.3. And I don't know.
So do you not like your turn bet or your river bet or
I don't
both?
like my river bet the most because I think it's too big. It doesn't need to be so large. If I'm going to bet at all, I don't. Yeah, it doesn't need to be as large.
So I agree with that part of it. Like the thing that I wrote in the review is that on the river, I was wondering how many sizes you have as a bet size.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have either one or two. Very advanced solver things might have 30 different sizes, but like human beings, the majority of us aren't going to be able to do that. So one or two is probably the best.
So I would just say it. I would just like say I have like block, like third pot, sometimes smaller, and I have like 2/3, and then pot and over bet, kind of the same thing for me on the river.
Yeah, I think 3 sizes is fine too. Um, what I would say is that you're going to want to have hands that bet all 3 sizes that are strong and weak, right? Like if you have
Yeah.
this size only with flushes or full house, that's bad. If you have the quarter pot, the block size only with weak queens, uh, that's bad. Like you still want to have bluffs in every part of your range. And so I think betting like the river with this hand is not a bad idea. You have 7 high. You almost assuredly, I mean, you could give him 2 random cards from the deck and you probably have the worst hand. You can still make him fold better hands like King Jack with a diamond. Um, Maybe even like Ace 5, Ace Deuce with or without a diamond. Maybe he calls the turn with Jack 9 of clubs because you bet so small. So I think betting the river's fine. I don't think this is the bluff I want to, like, the hand I want to pick for the big sizing. So when you bet the big sizing, you're basically repping a much stronger, I mean, not always, but you're going to be more polar, meaning you're not going to really have a queen when you pick this size.
Yeah.
You're going to probably have a flush, a full house, or nothing. I would guess anyway.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
And so I would like to use a hand that at least has some sort of a blocker to the hands that I think they're going to call me, which, I mean, and I know he never folds a queen, whatever. But if I want him to, like, I'd like to at least block the possible flush, because then that's, one fewer flush combo he could have that does call me. So I actually, if you had 7-6 with one diamond, I could see myself betting this size.
All right.
But 7-6 without a diamond, I think it's a lower equity bluff. And so I would actually use a smaller size for it.
What is your size you think you'd use?
I might just block size it, like bet like 1/3, 1/4 type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I was gonna do that, like if I'm gonna have that 1/3, 1/4 sizing anyway with some value hands, even some strong value hands, I have to use bluffs, so I'll use my ones that maybe are a little lower equity in that spot. I don't mind using it as a big size once in a while. It's just I did the thing that I wanted to mention about this hand is just how you want to have two sizes, but I don't think it's a punt. I think the turn bet is really good. If you look at the hand, you're like, all right, well, I know I have the worst hand. I know I can't win unless I bet, unless I bluff. And when he checks back the flop, you think he's pretty weak, right?
Yeah. And when the board pairs 4, I mean, that's surely better for me than it is for them. So, a small bet.
I mean, probably. I mean, he limps the button. He checks
Yeah.
back the flop. At the end of the day, if you think your opponent's range is weak, if you think they're not going to call very often, and you have the worst hand, then you want to bet. Like combinations of whatever you have, like that doesn't matter as much if you think they are weak and they're not calling. And they're, I'm going to win this pot 9 out of 10 times when I bet. I should probably bet. Right? Like, I think it's that simple. So
Yeah.
I like, the aggression, but I do think you could have made it a little bit less, but it's not a huge deal. But yeah, I think the important thing is that it's not a punt. Like, don't be too hard on yourself for bluffing. Like, you have to bluff to be successful, and you picked a spot where you have 7 high. If you check, you lose.
Yeah.
So I think that's all right, actually.
I just worry that putting out a block size is so frequently just gets called, just all the time. That's why
it's going to get called definitely more often.
Yeah.
But you're also risking less to win the same amount. Like if you bet 1.5 big blinds here, and he folds half the time, then you're just printing money.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just risking, your risk reward ratio is better when you bet smaller. But the counter is that people are going to call you wider. Some people might even call you with the king of diamonds and a jack, and that's kind of disastrous. But the same guy who's going to call the king of diamonds with a jack, like long term, it's not a great spot for him to call. That's the main hand you think you get to fold. So I don't think you're right that you're going to get called more. You'll lose the pot more, but long term, the value still could be better.
Yeah. Okay. That's a very good point. Actually, I really like it. I'm definitely going to think about that in the future as well.
And Wolverine had said betting big on the river seems like we have nothing, only want to steal. Now, again, as I said, we're going to have to bluff sometimes. It's just figuring out what do you want to bluff with. And you either want to bluff with the absolute worst possible hands that you have, or I guess, the times where you think your opponent is weak, or the times where you block the strong hands that they could call you with. And that's why I thought having a diamond is pretty good here, because now he has fewer slow played flushes when you have a diamond.
Okay. Makes a lot of
Uh,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah. These are some good fundamental issues in my game that definitely need ironing out. So
Yeah.
good spot, because that's usually something people sort of would glaze over in a hand history review.
Well, I also think in lower stakes games, people have this fear of bluffing because they think, as you said before, it never gets through. People don't fold. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some people don't fold. Most people don't fold enough, but it doesn't mean they never fold. If this guy's on the river with king nine of spades and you bet, he's gonna almost always fold.
Mm-hmm.
97 out of 100 players are gonna fold, and the other three, I don't know, fine, doesn't work versus them. If you identify a player who doesn't fold, then yeah, you shouldn't bluff them. But him calling with pocket fives is a lot different than him calling with ace eight of spades
Yeah.
or king jack with a diamond. So then I have hand number 191. Try that.
I'm guessing it's not deuce three offsuit.
No. What about 190? It's ace 10 suited.
Got it. Got it.
I knew it's
Okay.
around there somewhere.
I've got it. I've got it. Ace ten suited on the button.
Mm-hmm.
So early position opens. Cool. Middle. And I just call. Okay. I would first of all, I would like to see myself just shove here, I think. Checking it through, I'm okay with. Okay. And I start to bluff. uh, okay. I came to party. DJ, thanks for the 15 months, mate. Appreciate that. That is a funny hand. Is that at least quite a funny hand?
I think each street is interesting and worth discussing.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't think that happens normally in a hand history. It's rare where you like normally in these spots, we're gonna say, oh yeah, flop turn, pre-flop, whatever. Let's talk about river. That's interesting. Here, I think each street is discussion worthy, and it doesn't it doesn't mean that it's bad necessarily. It just means that there are a lot of spots where you could have gone the other way. Each street seems like potentially you could take a different action and be fine. Um, you could jam pre. It would depend on under the gun's opening range. If under the gun is really loose and crazy, what's up, Bingo? And the player who calls is also a little bit loose, or we think he's got a capped range when he calls, then we can, feel pretty good about jamming this in. If they're both tight, I really wouldn't want to jam it in. If the original razor is really tight, I wouldn't want to jam it in. But you could verse the right player types, their aggression levels, things like that. Otherwise, I think your flat is okay. It's fine. You have the button. You have a very strong suited ace that flops well. You're gonna have position on them. Another part of this hand is that if these two players that raise and flat are the two best players in the world, my continuing range here is going to be a lot tighter than if they're the two worst players in the world.
Okay.
Because how you get value the rest of this hand is going to obviously be post flop, and really great players are not going to pay you off as much when you have it. They're going to be better about hand reading, and they're going to be better about also realizing when your range is weak or capped and then trying to bluff you. So you just get less value from really good players, but you're going to get a ton of punt equity from really bad players. So I would call this one anyway, but let's say you had 10-9 suited, 9-8 suited. Like those hands versus certain players, I would feel a little uncomfortable playing this stack size against amazing players, even though it's going to be probably like solver approved. It's just if there's a big disparity between how good my post flop skills are and theirs, I'm going to lose equity. But if I'm better than them, then I'm going to gain equity. So, that's a really long way of me saying calling is okay.
Okay, I came around on the calling the button as well. I'm getting hard on myself with these hand histories when I'm going through them. Like, oh yeah, well I should have done that, should have done this. But no, I like calling too on the button. But I think the rest
Yeah.
of the hand is definitely worth talking about.
So,
Starting here.
we check back the flop.
Mm-hmm.
What hands? Tell me what you bet on the flop.
I would say my range is probably very tight in a multi-way pot here when it's checked to me on the button. So I'm going to struggle to bet. I mean, saying that, first thing I thought of was like, King 10 suited and any sort of open-ended straight draw. And obviously top pairs I would be betting. If I have like sixes, I don't know if I ever have those. If I have, a set, I'm betting. Basically any value and any good equity sort of draw, I think I'd probably want to bet in position. But
is this a good equity draw? Is this good enough?
Well, yeah, I guess in my mind, no. But I suppose it is.
So you would bet King 10 suited.
Yeah.
10-9 suited if you had that.
Yeah.
And then top pair, two pair, three of a kind.
Yeah.
So I think the value hands obviously are fine to be betting. I think betting King 10 is fine. I think betting 10-9 is fine. I do think overall, if you're going to tell me you're going to bet all your top pairs and those strong draws and your sets, all of your check back hands are super weak. Your best check back hand might be King Jack. Right? And if the turn is a 5 or a 7 or an 8 or anything other than a King Jack Queen, maybe even a 10, any opponent's just going to be able to bet turn. You're going to fold a lot of turns, or you're going to just be folding a lot of rivers. And you just have a range that isn't super strong when it checks back the flop. And good players will pick up on that and then use big sizings on turn and river and apply a lot of pressure to what is almost always a really weak hand. So I still would want to check back some strong hands here. Maybe not too strong, but if I have Queen 10 of spades, I might check that back. If I have King Queen of diamonds, some of the times I might check that back. If for some reason I have pocket sixes, I almost always bet it, right, versus weaker players. But for stronger ones, maybe once in a while I check that back.
To clarify, sorry.
Yeah.
I was saying to clarify, it's just it's multi-way pots I find quite difficult to get right. So I think that is probably more into why I'm more passive in them, I suppose. Which doesn't make sense because I think being more aggressive is always going to be better than being too passive. But that's just my sort of explanation. But yeah, multi-way.
Well, I do think that you're going to win the pot less when you're multi-way. When you're like being aggressive and your head's up, you only have to make one guy fold. When you're multi-way, you have to make two or more fold. So, your bluffing range isn't the same as it would be in a heads-up pot. Like you're gonna have to be a little bit tighter, but you still want to be doing the same core things that you do in a heads-up pot, which is attacking a weak range. So if both these guys, check, generally checking is weaker than betting. You want to use your position to your advantage, and that does, basically means, with position you can tell more accurately if people have stronger ranges or weaker ranges. So I think that this is a spot where I would be betting a lot. In fact, I think almost all of your range that calls pre in this spot might want to be betting. Like, I don't know if you have 9-8 suited, but if you did, that hand wants to bet. If you had 7-8 suited, that hand probably wants to bet. You have, I mean, 7-8 suited might be the worst hand in your range, and you have backdoor, at least backdoor straight draw, probably a backdoor flush draw, unless you have hearts. And you can put pressure on what we think their ranges are, that they're weak. You also, as we said before, you have a lot of strong hands that could bet. You have queen jack, you have pocket sixes, you could have king queen, you could have queen 10. Even like king jack is a hand that might want to still bet for value. So I'm trying to think what bad hands you have here that are kind of uncomfortable. Like maybe pocket sevens is kind of a weird hand to have here in this spot. Maybe that's one I'd want to check back. But sevens could just jam pre too. I don't know. It depends on your reads on your opponents. But generally, you want to be, I would say, betting this board in position when they check, because not only do they have weak ranges, but off this stack size, you have a really strong range. You have a lot of hands that are at least that are not weak. You have some middling, mid pair type hands, a lot of top pair hands, and some two pairs from sets.
Okay. It makes sense to bet range here, actually. You saying that makes just a ton of sense. It just, if I have 7-8 suited, like you said, betting flop, I'm assuming is sort of like we're building up to inevitably tripling it off, right? So that just feels kind of gross at the very start of that whole line.
Well, here, like if you bet 7-8 suited and you get called, and the turn's bad for your exact hand,
Yeah.
you don't have to bet. Like if the turn is let's say you have 7-8 of clubs, and the turn's the king of diamonds, I'm probably going to give up right now,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Like that's not a great card for me. But if the turn is the king of clubs, and now you pick up a flush draw against what you think is a weak-ish range, and you have 1-to-1 stack to pot ratio, right? 15 big blinds left, 15 in the middle, or whatever you want to call it, and now you have a flush draw, you could just jam the turn. If the turn is a 5, a 4, or a 9, nine's not great. But like those cards you improve equity on, you could still bluff. But 7-8 suited is legitimately the worst possible hand I think you could ever have here.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have those sort of hands, when you're at your bottom of your range and you're against players who have a weak range themselves, you want to be attacking. You want to be betting. And I think a lot of players are uncomfortable with betting as a bluff and then continuing to bet as a bluff because they think like, oh, I want to wait for an actual hand that I have. I don't want to lose my money on a bluff. But if you're not doing that ever, then better players, why would they ever pay you off? Like if you're afraid to bluff, either for one street or for your whole stack, then if other players recognize that and you bet big on the river, why would they ever call you?
Okay. See you later,
Um,
Ian, buddy.
and Eklos asks, is it their ICM? There's no ICM here in my mind. I mean, I don't know if we're close to the money, but this hand occurs like halfway through the file.
Yeah, so either we're just in the money or we're getting close to. I don't really know. We can tell if we just
I
show
mean,
chips. Yeah.
if we're 3 off the money, then now you have now a lot more of your hands are checkbacks because there is ICM of making the money. So if you're in the money, then the payouts are going to be flat for a long time. You've already locked up a min cash, like you want to be more aggressive. So that does make a difference. But if we're going to assume in the money, not final table, you're going to play this the same way.
Yeah, okay.
So I think, I mean, ultimately, I would end up betting the flop with your hand. I can make people fold better. If either player has a mid pair or a pair that's like between sevens and tens, or under sixes, or ace five. I mean, ace five is not better, but I can make them fold some better hands right now. And then depending on the turn, I could either make the nuts, make top pair, make third pair, or turn a flush draw. Like I have a lot of potential equity. So I just would have bet the flop.
Okay. I mentioned betting range on flop before. Is it? I guess that's not right, is it? Uh,
I think it's close. Like
because
I
if I have,
think that yeah.
sorry, no, you talk, you talk.
No, go for it.
I was gonna say if I have Ace Jack here or King Jack, is it a good bet? Is this a hand we want to check back? But if we do check back middle pairs, I mean, our range can't just be, you know, simply middle pairs that check then. So I was just interested to know.
I think hands like King Jack, Jack 10, and even like pocket eights, pocket nines, pocket sevens, those specific hands might play better as a check, but the problem is that if you're only checking those hands, your range is face up, and that's I think a bigger problem. So I think it's better to move them all actually into a betting range here. Uh, if I think that's going to be like an easier way to play, and it's going to help. Like it's going to at least balance your flop range. Um, I think those are the most tricky hands to think about here. It's mid pair, it's under pair type stuff. Because when you have top pair or better or a bluff, it's really easy. It's like, oh, okay, I'm getting value or I'm bluffing, and those hands are kind of in between. But as you said, you don't want to have a range that's entirely in between type hands.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm with you. Because that
Um,
range is just purely in between. Shall we move
yeah,
to the
and so
turn on this
yes.
very interesting hand? By the way, there is no like rush on my end, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
My evening plan's been cancelled.
I'm sorry to hear that, but glad we have more time.
It's good. um, okay, it's turn. We make bottom pair after checking it through. Check,
You
check,
could bet turn here too.
and here we go.
I
Yeah,
mean,
so
as played when you check flop, you could bet turn. It you could get some value from worse, right? Like if somebody has king 10, if somebody has pocket nines, pocket eights, a diamond draw, even people with like ace 5 might call the turn. So you could get some value with your hand. Um, I I'm trying to think if I would ever use it as a bluff, as like check back flop, bet turn, bet river. Maybe, depending on the people, I might bet river. We'll see. But yeah, I think you could have bet the turn here. Like
um,
so far, like on the flop, we could say we think they've got weak ranges, but when they check twice,
mhm,
it's almost assured they have weak ranges.
yeah, 100%. Um, if we're betting our 10 here though, do we need to bet a 10? Because is that not turning this hand into a bluff somewhat? We're not value betting it multi-way, right?
Well, I think we could get value from some hands. It's definitely possible, like the hands I mentioned.
Yeah.
And if if somebody does call, let's say they call the turn and the river is a offsuit 4, I mean, I'm just going to check this back. I hope my 10 is good. Sometimes it is. Other times I lose less against like Jack 9 than I would have by checking back, calling a river. Um, but also, if the river ends up being another 10 or a king, I can value it again and feel pretty comfortable that my hand for sure is the best now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we would be value like if I bet this on the turn, it it works as a value bet somewhat. It also works as a hand that can set up a potential bluff on some runouts. So uh in this like on the turn itself, I'm looking for value, but I'm also trying to like I could set up a bluff if I want. I could check back the river if the river gets meh for me. I could lose less against a top pair, a middle pair, and all those things are good things, right? I want all those things are good outcomes for me. If I lose less versus a better hand, if I get value versus a worse hand, or if I set up my hand as a bluff versus a better hand and get that to full, those are all great options. And I think they all kind of start with betting.
Yeah. Okay. Are you okay to continue?
Yep.
Okay. So every street this hands, we could argue, could have played it differently. Well, you would have definitely played it differently, um, which is definitely something to take into consideration. I made me think a lot about my flop, my flop betting multi-way just then as well. Because I'm like, if I'm checking here, then that's just bad. Anyway,
I think so. If the thing for me that really helps decide my action in some of these spots is I think betting flop keeps me uncapped, and it allows me to have bluffs, and it makes those bluffs a lot more uh reasonable and successful. It's set like again like betting flop might not be the best option with all of your hands all of the time, right? But I think it sets up really profitable situations for turns and rivers. And against population, against most people, I wouldn't really be super worried that I might be over betting flop in this spot, that they might exploit me. Because I think population just doesn't adjust really well to people being aggressive or people betting in position. So I would prefer to bet this flop. I just think it sets me up better for turns and rivers to bluff effectively or get value. And really, those are the big streets. That's really where we, win or lose a lot of the money.
okay.
So on river, why did you decide to bet?
Because they've bet 3 streets now. I have a 10, and I'm like, right. So I could win at showdown, but I'd rather. Basically, I in this situation, I know I'm not getting called, especially if I bomb the river like this on such a dangerous river card, where both of them have shown themselves to be very passive and kind of weak. Um, so rather than just be like, well, let's say this play here, maybe I don't know, yeah, maybe they've got like somehow they've got to the river with a jack they haven't bet at some point. I don't know what jack they could possibly have that doesn't bet by this point, but let's just say they do. Well, that just cannot call anymore. There's no queens around. There's no 2 pairs around. That's pretty like certain at this point. And when they both check river, none of them's got a straight either, in my opinion. The worst case scenario, I think, is just one of them has pocket eights and maybe makes a hero call, and then well, I wouldn't even say it was a hero call, but yeah, it makes it a call, and yeah, I lose. But I think I'm just getting folds so often. That's why I just do it. I just pull the trigger.
I think what you end up doing here, conceptually, is the things I was talking about doing earlier streets or in other hands. Is you've read them for having a really weak range, and now you're attacking, and your hand itself isn't that terrible in that you block ace king, and that you block some 2 pair combos. Like, yeah, you could check and probably win at showdown a lot of the time, but you choose to attack what you think is a weak range, and I think that's a good idea theoretically, and so I'm all for that. I It's hard for me to say what I would do here because I don't think I have a range that checks back twice and then bombs the river very often because I don't. I mean, I'm trying to think what hands I would use other than a 9 for value, right? Maybe I would use if I had like pocket threes or something. So it's not something I would do a lot in this spot. I wouldn't be in this exact river spot very often, so it's a little harder for me to get there. But uh, I think you're again theory wise. I think they're weak. I want to bet. Like I think that's a great thing. And if people simplify their game down to just that, I think that's going to be very successful. At least a good starting point. Um, but yeah, Spiff, he's definitely only getting called by better. That's for sure. He's definitely well. I mean, unless you come
I
against
don't
the
want
worst
to.
player ever,
I don't want to call.
it's a bluff. Yeah,
It's
he's
pure
bluffing.
bluff.
Um,
And the sole purpose, honestly, is to fold out Jack X because that's all I really think they can have at this point. I don't know what 9X I can actually credibly represent here that wasn't already a straight, other than Ace 9 suited. I've called on the button, and that's about it. I've checked down.
yeah, you don't really have. I mean,
That's
maybe
like
you had pocket nines, but you jam that pre.
yeah, jam it pre.
Um, Yeah, I definitely, if we look at your value hands here, I don't think you have enough value hands anyway, but that's not a huge part of it. Um, by the way, ace nine suited might be a hand that I bet flop with.
Yeah.
Like if you had ace nine of diamonds, you bet flop and then you could just jam turn. And now the same guy with king jack or pocket sevens or uh ace 10 or whatever you want to say, king 10 might just fold.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually might get, I, I think the taking the aggressive line in the spot is going to win you a lot more than the passive line. And I think when people take the passive line overall, they're just hoping the cards work out in their favor, and they are, they're resigned to their fate to whether they hit the river card or not. And yeah, that might work for some people some of the time, but you're going to have a much better chance of winning long term if you kind of take matters in your own hands and just don't wait for the cards to bail you out, right? Like take the aggressive
Yeah.
line, try to win the pot before the card gets dealt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get what you mean. I should and definitely do it sooner as well than the river. But yeah, you understand my thought process goes to river, obviously. Like,
Yeah, I think on the river they've got weak ranges.
yeah,
I think top of range is probably king jack, ace jack. Maybe the cutoff has like 8-6 suited type stuff.
yeah,
So yeah, I don't think they have super strong range. Um, so I think it's as a bluff, it's hard to imagine them having that many better hands. So it's gonna work. It just I think people think it's weirder when you have a 10. If you had ace five or like king five suited, I think it would be more digestible. But regardless, it's fine. Um,
interesting
and then I
hand.
have hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you want to add anything more about this one?
No, I think I'm good now. I think we
Okay.
can move on to another one.
Hand number 260, so probably 258. It is ace jack offsuit in MP.
This look good. Yeah. Okay, so let's run through the hand like we had before.
Mhm.
Eklo, by the way, won 215 on the Ontario 888 back-to-back nights for
Back to back champ.
many thousands of dollars. And
Wait,
uh,
so is that the last two sessions Eklo you've had? Are you going
yes,
for a third?
yeah, you got to go for three, right?
That needs to be streamed. It needs to be highlighted. Yeah, you need to be spamming the chat box, telling everybody you're a back to back champion.
Have you ever gone back to back to back in the same tournament ever? I can't
Yeah, but it
remember
was
ever
like a
doing it.
sit and go, like a 9-man sit and go. Does that count?
Nah, no, no. Got
Okay.
100 runners minimum, or like 50 runners minimum. Actually, we'll say 50.
What about like a heads up sit and go? No, I've never gone back to back to back.
I've never gone back to back in a heads up sit and go. All right. Here we go. I raised up pre, and I've got ace jack. How am I going to go wrong with this hand? What could go wrong? Okay, flop size, standard for me. Pools. Turn. Don't check, you net. Good. So what I'm doing is just lining up the triple barrel, I guess. And I line up the triple barrel. I don't always necessarily triple barrel. And I might check this one back. Yeah. So I'm going to guess they shot with a raggy ace. Yes. And I regret not shoving river.
So what hands? What hand? Well, tell me why you didn't shove the river.
I don't know. That sounds really nitty, and I hate myself for not shoving river, to be honest with you. Like, it seems like such a so much just getting check jammed on the turn that beats me, if it does at all. I think maybe the 9 may be uncomfortable, but thinking about that, like, what draws can they actually have? Not any that really come in there. So I don't know. It's a badly played hand. I'm gonna say blunder on this one. Actually, I'm just gonna hold my hands up here. I feel like this is poor.
Yeah, I thought the flop and turn was fine. It was. I mean, you were saying it as you were going through it. I'm setting up the triple barrel. Obviously, some rivers, I guess, aren't as good as others. The 9 does complete 2 possible straights, 8-6 and Jack 8. But you have a Jack in your hand. So it makes it a lot less likely he has Jack 8.
Mm.
Um, and my other question would be, what hands do you shove on the river? Let's talk about your value shoves first. Like what are your slam dunk, no brainer value shoves?
Well, normally ace king, ace queen, ace jack should be there. And then obviously any two pairs. Ace eight, no. Like ace eight suited, I'll probably take that one back. I think I'd triple that one off. And then yeah, it's two pairs sets. If I have a straight. Yeah, but yeah.
And then, so why do you have? Would Ace Jack normally be a value shove for you?
Yeah, yeah. I'd say so. I think it's just. I think this hand for me looks like a blunder, but I say that it definitely occurs more than I would like.
Well, just you'd said Ace King and Ace Queen are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a significant difference between
No,
Ace King and Ace Jack in this spot.
no, because Ace Jack is at worst. Well, at worst, it's they've rivered two pair, or um, they also have Ace Jack. It's at worst,
Well,
right?
yeah, I don't think my opponent has Ace King
No,
almost ever when he flats pre. I
almost
don't
never.
think he has Ace Queen when they flat pre. It's some people do, but off. I mean, he starts to hand with like 23 big blinds, and you open MP. Like most people just jam Ace Queen, and rightly so.
Yeah,
So if those hands aren't in his range, Ace Jack is Ace King.
yeah.
And Ace Jack might be better than Ace King actually as a jam
Because we
because Ace
block.
Jack would block Jack 8. So all those seem like fine value jams. What are your bluffs going to be?
So I quite like Queen Jack. I quite like tripling off with King Jack. I'd probably find it with King Queen. Um, pocket. Well, I've been told off this before, but like pocket fours, I could definitely triple off here, hands like that. Yeah, somewhere around that
It's still
area.
even if we use all the combos of Broadways here, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if that's enough combinations. Like if you think about how many like uh, one thing I'm actually not great at, which I should get better at, is realizing how many offsuit combinations there are of things. But even if we just, as we said, okay, you have all your Broadways suited and offsuit, and you have the random pocket fours, which I probably might not use fours, but maybe it's not a huge deal. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, that's like 4 types of hands, right? And your value hands though were not only sets, but then 2 pair, which you have ace 10, ace 7, ace 5, ace 9.
Mm-hmm.
You might have 7-10 suited. As we said, pocket 10s, pocket 7s, pocket 5s. You probably have. You probably don't have
Yeah,
pocket 9s at triples, but 5s you do.
yeah,
And you still have ace king, ace queen, ace jack. Like ace king, ace queen, ace jack, suited and offsuit are an equal number of combos as king queen, king jack, and queen jack. So automatically you have it seems like you have way too many value hands. And maybe that's the wrong way to put it. The way to put it is you don't have enough bluff combinations. Like the ratio you have here is so weighted towards value. Um, and I think that's true of most people that they struggle to find the thin value bets in this spot. Um, and they don't have enough bluffs. So maybe, you could try to find more bluffs. Really, if you were talking about this theoretically, you do want to have more bluff combos, I think. Versus weaker players, if you think he never folds top pair, then you don't have to have as many. But if you think he folds second pair to a shove or third pair to a shove, you want to be jamming it in with a lot of bluff combos.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about using 9-8 as a bluff?
Yeah.
We hit a pair of 9s in the river, but targeting 10x, get some ace-x to fold. I think 9-8's a decent combo, Smith.
What about Jack 9?
I
Jack
like
9's
it.
good, right?
Yeah, I think it's targeting like not only their hand but player type. Because some people will sit there like if he snaps off ace deuce, I am making a note, and the note isn't necessarily, LOL, guy calls top pair can't fold har har. It's just if he calls it really fast, I know he's never folding these sort of hands, and he's not even thinking about folding, and I need to be aware of that because that affects how often I bluff him.
Okay.
So, it's another spot where we can talk about it as if he's a blank slate. We don't know who he is, what hands we should use. But the more you know about an opponent, the easier it is to kind of think through these spots. But if you jam the end here with ace jack, I don't think most players fold top pair. I know I personally am not folding ace 8 or ace 6 because they block straights.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, I guess that only like ace 4, ace 3, and ace deuce are really close, but I don't know. I think I might bluff more frequently than other people do. And some days, some hands, that is not great for me. Sometimes I get called and I lose the pot. Or, people see the bluff on stream and they think I'm going to bluff forever, whatever. But long term, it makes me more money. Because now this guy in the big blind is like, man, I've seen this guy bluff me before, other people, he's capable. And now instead of him calling ace deuce, he's sitting there with 10-8 and he's thinking about it. He's sitting there with 7-8, 7 jack, maybe even stuff like king 5. And it makes it harder for your opponents, right? When you're capable of bluffing, people are more likely to hero call you. And as long as you're balancing your range well, it's going to still work out in your favor.
So I see. So yeah. So basically, what you're saying is I just need to find more bluff combinations and never ever be checking this back in the situation. This is
I think if this was like a final table, I might check back the river, just because the chips won aren't worth the same as laddering up and making more money. Because each time somebody loses, you make more money.
mm-hmm.
In terms of pure chip EV, I wouldn't check this back. I would just go for thin value.
Worst value hand I've got, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
If you're button in this spot and not big blind, I think my worst value hand goes down to like ace 6.
Okay.
I might even jam ace 4, just because when you're button versus big blind, you're gonna have a wider range, and the big blind should know that, and now they're gonna call you a little wider.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. And you just have to cool down more because you just have to. Well, you're bluffing more, aren't you, in those positions? I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you are gonna have more bluffs from the button. You're gonna start with a wider range of hands from the button. So on the button here, you might have. I'm trying to think what hands. What if you had like queen 8, queen 8 suited on the button? Like you bet the flop, you get called. The turn is interesting. I would still bet turn because with queen 8, there are a lot of cards that will come on the river that either block a straight for, a jack, a king, a 9, a 6, would all be cards that you would block a straight on, a 4, sort of. So queen 8 could be a hand that I would triple barrel as a bluff. But I don't have queen 8 from your position. I only have it from button or cutoff.
Sure.
Okay. I feel like I don't know. I feel like that explanation wasn't as good as the previous ones, but
No, that was very
maybe
good.
just okay.
That's very good. I like it.
We'll give
It was
it an 8 out of 10.
The hand was simpler, but you gave a very good cut and dry answer.
What about hand number 296?
What's the hand?
Pocket 8s in the big blind.
Uh-oh. This looks like a final two table situation, doesn't it?
Don't worry. This one's a layup. It's a gimme. Don't worry about this one.
A gimme. Intrigued. Okay, there you open rip for 20. Okay, I thought I was gonna fold. Okay, win a pot. Okay.
So you thought you were going to fold. I want to just talk about what you what
I
you
never
thought
fold.
your calling range should be.
Okay. So I'm kind of guessing this is like final 10, 11. It might be like final like 19, 20 there. But yeah, what's my calling range going to be here? What, chippy V? Or if I'm
I
East
mean,
Coast
if
V?
it's final 10 or 11, it's a little bit tighter than Chippy V, but
Yeah.
it's not that much tighter. Um, but what sort of hands did you think? I mean, you thought this was close. Did you think this you'd call worst pairs?
Yeah, I would
Um,
definitely call worse pairs here, under normal circumstances anyway. Fives plus, maybe, maybe not, maybe not fives, but definitely I think sixes, and then like ace eight suited, maybe. Um, plus, I'm not sure. Maybe ace ten off. Yeah, maybe ace jack off. I don't know. You tell me. How wrong am I? I'm
well,
intrigued.
what do you think? I mean, whether you're right or wrong is gonna depend on what button's range is. Like I asked the question, what do we think our range is? And it's a bit of a trap question. Like it's actually, but this is how people generally think about hands. They'll think about, oh, what I would call with. And then when I ask the question of, well, what do you think your opponent has? They'll take some time to answer that one. But
Hmm?
the answer to question two gives us the answer to question one.
Okay.
So if I think he only jams pocket kings, that's all he jams, nothing else.
Yeah.
I should only call pocket aces, right? Um, so let's start with what do we think his range looks like?
Well, you don't see it as much these days, but people used to love 20 big blind jams on the button, deuces through fours, like deuces, threes, fours, maybe fives. That was a very popular thing. And then like suited wheel aces and things like that. I put in that category. I don't really put many other hands like in those categories, and I'm quite shocked to see those had ace seven. I just don't think it's a very good jam at all. Yeah, ace queen off. Spaceman Smith says like I can see that. Jack ten suited as well. Yeah, for sure. Like that kind of hand. But I definitely wouldn't put obviously their best hands up there. Like I definitely wouldn't put I'm not going to necessarily say sixes for everybody, but it's definitely sevens plus. You know, you want to induce more. Like look at Peter Yanker there with 15 big blinds. So it's clearly a hand they don't especially want to be called by. I don't know. Would people do this with King Jack suited? I don't know. But just you're not gonna give them Ace King. I'm not gonna give them anything better than Pocket Sevens. I'm not gonna give them much else here. So obviously eights is printing, and yeah,
I mean, I think you're right that they definitely have a capped range because people don't open jam 19 big blinds, aces, kings, queens here, right?
no,
They just always raise them. They normally raise jacks tens here as well. They normally, although a little bit less likely, still raise nines. But those deuces through sixes, maybe sevens, maybe eights, depending on the player. Like maybe those are the kind of hands that people jam in. The Broadway hands you mentioned, the pseudo wheel aces, though even like ace jack off, ace queen off, ace
mm,
10 off type stuff. Those are the kind of hands people jam in. Um, I think having jack 10 suited or king jack suited is kind of the same. Like they're the same kind of hand, but all these hands we mentioned are weak. They all are the you said it a second ago, the hands that don't want to get called.
yeah,
That's the range they have. And so if they have a range of hands that are weak, capped, don't want to get called, and they don't have they don't have the top of their range, then yeah, when I'm sitting here with pocket eights, I feel like I have the nuts.
mm-hmm,
Because the pairs we mentioned our opponent likely having are all worse than ours. So we're going to have him dominated, or he's going to have a wheel ace, which we have dominated, or we're going to run into the exact top of his range, which is, I mean, in this spot for us, we don't want to see king jack because that has 50% equity.
Mhm.
I guess he could have pocket nines once in a while. Okay, fine. But even if he has pocket nines at the same frequency of every other deuces through sevens or whatever, we're crushing his range.
Mhm.
We're almost always 80% or 50%. I mean, it's mostly 80 and then some 50 and then almost 0, 20. So like even if, it ends up being like 65, 70% versus range, depending on the weightedness of what hands he has exactly. But that's in MTT poker, like being 65% versus a certain range is, I mean, the dream spot, really.
Yeah.
So I would snap eights. I would still call, if it's pure chip EV, I'm probably I know I'm calling sixes. And I'm probably calling fives only because I don't think people jam pocket eights here very often. I think they still raise eights. Depends on the player.
Mhm.
But if he has a range that's capped at sevens, then he has sevens and sixes. I lose to that with fives. But I beat deuces, threes, and fours. So I beat more combinations of his pairs, and I would make the call with sixes. Well, fives. I said fives for chip EV. And maybe on a final table bubble type situation, I call sixes. It's pretty close between fives and sixes, but I'm never folding sixes. I know that. And I'm not folding ace 10 off because I think it's far more likely he has a worse ace than a better one.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, even king queen suited might be a call in chip EV. Probably not ICM, probably not here, but yeah, like the hand he shows up with is squarely in the range that I expect, and I think this 19 big blind jam is not something you want to really ever be doing because you don't want to tell your opponent what type of hand you have because that makes it really easy to play. If you've got king 8, you're still folding. It doesn't matter,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't change anything. But at least when people raise, when you have a hand like, let's say you have pocket threes, you're not calling a shove.
No.
But if he raises, you're probably going to jam.
Yeah.
So now if he has pocket fives or pocket sixes, he ends up getting no value from your pocket threes. He could have doubled up. He gets no value, but he still gets called by better hands like pocket eights. So he created a situation where he never gets called by when he's pocket threes. Basically, never gets called by worse, gets called by better, and still gets called by a lot of the 50% type hands.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think your call is great. I just want to talk about what his range looks like because that's how we determine whether we call or not. Um, it's what our opponent's range looks like,
Yeah.
and there are programs out there like I actually have ICMizer up right now where you can put in the range of your opponent, put in the stack sizes, put in the blinds, and it will tell you, all right, well, if he's shoving these hands, you can mathematically call these hands. And programs like that really helped me when I was playing sit and goes. It just helped me learn what my ranges should look like because as easy it is to see like pre-flop hand charts, there really aren't any call shove charts that I think that I've seen.
Mm.
Because it requires like the output requires a certain input. And I think a lot of people would benefit from using this kind of software and playing around with the ranges. And then they can realize, oh, if he's really aggressive, I can call this hand. Oh, he's really tight. I should only call these hands. And you can do all that off-table studying. And then when you get to this spot, you're not even thinking about it. You're actually like, I'm guessing when you saw this hand happen in real time, your reaction was like, oof, I guess I have to call. It seems close. It's a lot of big blinds. And when I saw it, I was just fist pumping, like, oh man, we are crushing.
Honestly, I'd be like, yeah, I'm fist bump calling this also.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So okay, some people might be scared. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, but I think there would be. Because yeah, I have played around with Ice Mojo a little bit myself. Not to the greatest extent. I'm not like super amazing with it, but I'm pretty comfortable with what I should be calling in this sort of spot generally. I'm definitely capable of a massive punt occasionally, usually on stream, but generally I think we're okay. But yeah, I know what you mean because I've seen people play and they're like, oh, it's a massive bet. I've only got eights. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good explanation there as well, but that's a good point. I am definitely as guilty of being the shover here with the 20 big blind stack occasionally, because it makes things so simple. It's like I don't want to get called, so I'll shove here, and it'll be easier to win. Hopefully, that's it's lazy poker, really, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I think there's definitely value in simplification,
Yeah.
but you know, you still at this stack size, I think, want to always be raising. I think that's a simple way to do it. I would just never have a shove range. Like if you have 13 big blinds, there's part of your range that wants to shove, and you can design a range that does just open shove and make it easy. But I know and you know, if you have pocket kings here, you're not open shoving.
Yeah.
And so the more information you give to another player about how your range looks or what sort of hand you have, the easier it is for them to exploit you.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Shall we move on to the next hand? Maybe I might have to say this is the last hand, depending how long it
That's
goes.
fine.
Is that okay with you?
Were there any hands that you saw in the hand history you wanted to go over?
I'd much rather go over hands that you've picked out because I think that's going to offer me more value. To be honest, I'm not trying to.
Okay.
I'm not trying to be a kiss ass, whatever. But
So there, what I'll say first is before there are like 7 or 8 hands that are kind of similar, and we don't have to go through them all.
yeah.
But all of them are spots where you could be open raising. Stuff like Jack 10, the hijack, King 10, and the cutoff. And what I would say is if you think you have an edge on your opponents, if you think you play better than they do post flop, you want to be playing more hands with them.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be giving the weaker players. It's a decision race, right? Like you are battling with someone else who can make better poker decisions. And if you think you're better than them, like you want to allow them into the pot basically to make those decisions. So you want to be, even though the Jack 10 and the cutoff or the hijack is a little bit weak, it's like, yeah, but it sets up all these good situations for me in the future. So I think you were a little tight with your open raising range.
Yeah.
Overall, and there were a lot of spots where you could be raising more.
Yeah.
And
So
then
I had a hand history. I had a database analysis done by Solid Thought not very long ago, and yeah, I'm just a bit too tight in certain spots. And he's pointed that out to me and just said, just look at some charts for 15 minutes before every session, and you'll get that VPIP up. Basically, that's what he said. But I'm aware I'm too tight pre-flop, but definitely something I've been adjusting recently. Yeah,
and I think like that is going to really help because it allows you to be in pots against people who are worse players, and they're going to do crazy things and they're going to give you money, right? So that just is going to lead to extra profit that you're not allowing yourself to get at this current point without playing a little bit looser.
okay.
And then I have hand number 316.
316.
It's pocket sevens.
Uh-oh. This is the final table, I think.
Okay.
Because I know that because this is a community member who is also on the final table. Right, 2 sevens. We are decent chip lead. Final table. We go for an open. I think I remember this hand. I'm going to bet 1 big blind. Yep. Fools. I reckon I shut down here, and I don't really want to double them up. I don't know. Oh, I don't shut down. I bet really small. This is kind of bad. Okay. I didn't like it. I second. How bad is my head, by the way? Like I'm second guessing myself all the time. Like I'm gonna shut down here. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do all the wrong decisions, and it works out well. Um, in the end. But okay, let's have a look at it again. So I raised pre, bet one big blind. So the one big blind I think is completely normal. Um, and the thing is, the stack to pot ratio. If they call this miniature bet on the turn, right? Is this going to be? I can't bluff the river really. I expect them to fold very often. That's my thought process looking back at this, and now I'd like to hear why you've tagged this hand.
So I think the turn is interesting. I think it's a spot where you could check, you could bet. And I was really more interested in hearing why you did what you did. Uh, I think if you made me justify both options, I could do it. I could talk about how betting turn is uh, amazing for these reasons. I mean, I'll just do it. All right. I think if you bet turn here really small, you can possibly make a king fold. You can put a lot of pressure on a short stack trying to ladder. You do block flushes. You deny equity to if he has a three. I guess you deny some equity to that. Hand like 3-4 or something like that. 5-4. So there's some value in denying equity. There's some value in potentially bluffing, getting him to fold slightly better, like a king. And then it could set up a river jam where you use it as a bluff. On the flip side, checking. I don't know how many that many better hands you're going to get to fold. It's only like the weak kings we talked about. King with a spade's probably not folding. He does have some flushes still. He does maybe have some top pairs that are never folding. Even though you deny equity to a three, if it's a three with a worse spade, it's not that much equity overall. Or a five with no spade, again, same thing. So as I said, you can justify both sides of it. I think it's debatable what you want to do there, but I just wanted to hear you talk about it.
Okay.
Because I think we get caught up sometimes doing coaching about whether this one hand is good or bad. This decision is good or bad. But what matters more is the thought that goes into the decision.
Okay.
So if you think he's going to be nitty and fold all of his kings, and you decide to use your hand as a bluff to make him fold a king now, or bluffing non-spade rivers to make him fold, then your action is totally reasonable. Your bet makes sense. Everything falls in a logical path. And when there's debate in poker about many different actions you can take. And a lot of times the equities are similar or they're close enough. We don't need to worry about it. But the thing that matters is how you think about the hand, because that allows you to, play future hands with a similar and correct thought process.
Okay. So first of all, it's versus somebody who I know from my community, um, and I don't want to sound like rude or anything. I don't think they're a bad player, by the way. I think they're a decent player, but this is quite a big final table from their perspective. Someone who would normally play like micro stakes and things like that. So this is actually, I think, quite a bit of a bigger spot. And I thought, given that, like, I know they're going to be edging on the tighter side, and I was like, well, if I'm gonna try and look like I'm milking them here, I want them to fold a king because I know they're quite, they're intelligent as well. So I felt like they would fold enough king x here, based on a small bet on the turn, which just looks like they've been lined up for disaster on the river. If they have just a king, I'm not trying to get an ace to fold. I think an ace x on the flop, they're just saying sayonara. They're shoving over my one big blind bet. So all they have here is now pretty like the range is much more condensed now to king x flushes, and kings are folding. I think a lot of the time. I'm probably following through on the river if it's non-spade as well, checking back spade because it with 7 of spades. I think that kind of makes sense. I would like to almost bet smaller on turn as well to give my river shove a bit more oomph as well. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with most of that. There are a couple like little things that I think a lot of players, I myself anyway, wouldn't check jam and ace, so I still have those in my range, but some people do. You're trying to make him fold a king, which you think is a bigger part of his range than an ace overall. So like maybe some of the assumptions I don't agree 100% with,
Mhm.
but if they're correct, then then your bet makes sense from the perspective of I'm going to turn my hand to a bluff and I'm going to follow through on rivers because even if he calls the turn with, let's say, king with a jack of spades, when this river's a brick in an ICM spot, it's a really tough situation whether he's going to call that sort of a hand.
Mhm.
Not everybody does. Some people do, some don't. Some kind of flip a coin, decide how they're feeling. So I think, from that perspective, it can work. It's fine. I wasn't gonna say, bet turn bad, bet turn good. Like I just didn't think that was really gonna be very helpful. But as long as you're thinking about hands like that, I think that is the secret sauce, right? It's thinking about hands in that sort of a way. What am I trying to make him fold? What sort of hands does he have here? How successful is my bet going to be? How big does my bet need to be? Am I balanced? Does my line make sense? Like I think those are the important questions that need to be asked. In addition to like, will he fold? Um, and those playing playing each hand, each street with those questions in mind are going to be the things that lead to successful decisions. It'll help you pick the right bet size, decide whether to bet or check, whether to attack this sort of player, what sort of range they have. Those are all the things that go into basically deciding, should I bluff or should I not? Should I value bet big or small? Like those are what need to be answered in real time. And if you're doing a good job with those, you're making good decisions then, and then good results are more likely to follow.
Good. I like to think I think about it, but sometimes I think it's sometimes I don't think about it. That's what I'm trying to say. Uh, I just
Well,
think about it more. I know what you mean.
well, you'd said before I think it was on stream. I might have been off, but you felt your autopilot game wasn't as good as it could be.
Yes, 100%.
And
And that's why you see me playing a bit too tight. I think because I just, well, without thinking, a lot of hands I should probably be opening.
yeah, and I think raising that autopilot game would be really, really beneficial.
Mhm.
So having certain things become kind of second nature is gonna just most people I think when they would agree they play worse when they're either tired or not really focusing. But I don't know what book it was. I think it might be Mental Game of Poker. That if your current autopilot game is like a C game, uh, you would see significantly greater results and winnings and all that stuff, equity, if you raised it to like a B minus game.
Mhm.
It's way better. And I don't have any real tips on how to improve your autopilot game. I off the top of my head, I would say, you know, um, studying off the felt and making things again as more standard decisions would really help, I guess. Because every decision that's kind of standard, that's like the autopilot thing people are used to talking about, they're used to doing. So if other decisions become normal for you, or oh, this is just a normal thing that I do, my normal bet size, um, if thinking about their range becomes a normal thing, then that becomes part of your autopilot game. And that can really help you just have better results.
Yeah, yeah. Good, good pointers. I definitely know I need to raise that game, and it's something I'm working on at the moment. Big year ahead.
It's tough. It's tough. It takes effort, right? You're just
Yeah.
training yourself to learn new skills and breaking out of bad habits. And it's in anything, whether it's poker or a regular job or fitness or diet, breaking out of bad habits is as hard as building good ones.
Mhm.
And you're trying to do both.
Yeah.
So